On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very exciting treat. She's the co-founder and previous president of Boss Babe, where she recently exited, and she's a customer experience expert and lifetime value enthusiast for multiple millions in the Boss Babe community. No big deal. She's an influencer and an expert on all things growth, strategy, operations, and memberships, just to name a few. Her ability to foster and grow a strong community of like-minded individuals is second to none. And she's here to teach you how to successfully scale your business on social media. Not to mention, her content will penetrate your soul. Big facts. She's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific businesswoman and human. Please welcome the savvy, dynamic, and charismatic, the beautiful and authentic Danielle Canty. How you doing, Danielle?
Oh my God, Craig, I'm blushing after that intro. Jeez, thank you. You can be my hype man, just following me around. I love it.
I did good by you. You feel nice and elevated?
Oh my God, I do. I feel on cloud nine.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny because we were just chatting before we hit record, and there's a lot of alignment here. We've kind of been in similar circles for a while. It's about time we finally connected, and straight out the gate, well, I'll just go right into it. Reinvention. What an exciting time! We just dropped our book, The Reinvention Formula, first one. And for me personally, I reinvented myself 3 years ago, and it was the best decision I ever made. You've done it now a couple times, and just straight off the cuff, like for anyone out there that knows that they're here for something more or wants to pursue other interests, what does it take to completely reinvent yourself?
Oh my God, great question. And I never really thought about having previously reinvented myself, but it's actually, seeing the title of your book, I was like, oh my goodness, I have reinvented myself and kind of going into my third iteration now. But I think first and foremost, it takes courage.
Mm.
I don't think it's an easy thing to do, but I would also say it takes hope. And I would say some people might want to interchange that word and say faith, but I would say like hope that something better can come along, something, more extraordinary is out there, and hope that you will find your full purpose and find that clarity that you've often been seeking, because I think reinvention is reborn from wanting to create change. I have been through chapters of my life, and I think this is something that really people struggle with. When I first did my first reinvention, I guess you could call it, and I've done reinventions actually in my professional life and my personal life. And, and I left school, a friend reached out to me, and I was living in LA at this time. It was actually an old boyfriend. I've not spoken to him in about 14 years. And he said to me like, oh my God, you've changed, as if that was a derogatory thing. And I was like, hell yeah, I've changed. First of all, it's been 14 years.
Right.
And second of all, like I would expect us to have changed. And I think sometimes people really can perceive change as a bad thing. Like, oh, it's negative if you've changed, or, if you've changed your situation. But I really see it as a good thing. I think that if we're not careful, we get tied into this, we start this book, let's think of our life as a book. And whereas most people think we have to have that book the whole entire lives, what if actually there was volumes of that book? There was volume one. Volume one comes to a natural conclusion. And then you pick up the character again, volume two, and they're on to this next path, driven really by their values. And I think that's what my story has been all about, is the reinventions haven't really been, reinventions for the sake of reinvention. They've been reinventions for a belief that I can be better, I can do more, and I can create more impact. And they've always, sat within my value system of delivering to serve. And sometimes when you first start out on this journey, you might not, I don't know, just the analogy that springs to mind is like learning an instrument, right? When you learn something or learning a craft, you start at the beginning and you think, okay, well, I'll learn this and I'll get to grade 1 or grade 2. You don't jump to grade 8 straight away. And so I really see that in like reinvention. Like I feel like I started wanting to help, and then that helping was one-to-one, that helping became 1 to 20, 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000, 1 to 1,000,000. But I could never have got to the big vision if I hadn't already been through those stepping stones to get me to these points. So that's how I see reinvention, and why I think change is such an amazing thing, because you get to be more and have more impact and create more good in the world, in my opinion.
I love it. And it's a never-ending journey of expansion. And
Yeah,
you
for
mentioned
sure.
like you're not the same cat you were 14 years ago. Like, if I'm being honest, I'm not the same cat I was 3 weeks ago. Like I'm growing so rapidly. And a common question I always get asked is like, how do you handle people that you might have outgrown or stuff like that? And I just want to be clear, like I just want to be around people like you that have a common future as me, not so much a common past. People that are like talking about growth and expansion and doing great things. And it doesn't mean that I think I'm better than anyone else in my past. I'm just going in a different direction. And you're not really outgrowing people because they have a chance to grow with you. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I agree. And, to this day, I still have some of my childhood friends who I've known since I was 3 years old. So they've been in my life 30 odd years, and they've stayed in my life because they still have a very, very similar value system. They might not be doing similar careers. In fact, they're not entrepreneurs at all, a doctor and a lawyer, but we still have a lot of common connections. I think that when it's okay that sometimes you let go of people in your past, would actually, it's not necessarily that they aren't going where you want to go, because I actually think diversity in your friendship groups and diversity in the people you're around is great, but it's their value systems might not be the similar or the same to yours anymore.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by like a value system is like, for me, what's really important, and let's say just for friendships, right? Friends that I really enjoy in my life have a similar value system where it's like, you don't need to talk every single day. And you also know if that person reaches out, you will be there for them if they're like, SOS, I need
Yeah.
you. And you've not even spoken for 3 months. But it's not like all of a sudden anyone's getting offended if you've not like checked in on them for a while. Like if they need you, that's their responsibility to ask too, right? In the kindest way. Of course but what I'm trying to get across is like, it's those things that often tie us to people. And like, okay, well, if one of my biggest value systems is growth. I was with my partner for 14 years. And my biggest value systems was growth and expansion. Like I really like learning.
Same.
And his wasn't that. He really struggled with change, and he really struggled with, he liked certainty in his life. And so when in my previous life, my previous role was a chiropractor, that was a lot of certainty. It was a very certain profession. It was a very certain route. Probably have mapped out the next 40 years of my career pretty easily on one piece of paper. Whereas when I transferred into being an entrepreneur and taking on a lot more risk and a lot more uncertainty and a lot more, I guess diversity and all the things that I was doing, that became really challenging for him. And we realized that our value systems are so different. I wanted to be moving countries. I wanted to be doing all of these things. And that wasn't the life that he wanted. And who am I to make him want any life? And that's fine. But it's like, so what I'm saying, like, I agree with you. It's not about the past, but it's where you're going. And I don't even necessarily think sometimes it's like, oh, I can't be friends with you if you're not an entrepreneur, or you can't have this relationship if you're not X, Y, and Z. But ultimately, value systems underlie every single one of us. And if you don't have a similar value system, it becomes really, really difficult to maintain those relationships. If you think about as well, just like finish on this, it's like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So there's lots of like studies done that if you are friends with a lot of obese people, the chances are you are going to be overweight as well, because you're doing activities or your value system is X, Y, and Z. And that goes with the same with, in business or with any of these pieces. So just really understanding value systems. So I think if you're somebody who prioritizes health, or you prioritize love, or you prioritize connections, or you prioritize money, or you prioritize whatever that is, just realize that the people that you attract around you and hold close to you will help you reach those goals or not reach those goals quite often.
You're on fire. You can't be stopped. This is awesome. This conversation, like a similar topic, comes up a lot, but I never heard it as beautifully articulated as the way you just said it. It is a value system, right? And just to be clear, it doesn't mean like you're right or
No,
your ex was wrong. It's just that these are my highest values. And if yours is somewhere else, there's probably not going to be so much alignment. Pretty simple.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you see it sometimes, like some people's values is like significance. Like they really, really want to be the center of attention. And there's nothing wrong with that. it's just that that's their value system, and they'll attract people that have a similar value system to that. And then others might not too. And then they might fall into different categories or different friendship groups or different businesses. And I think that's always the thing. Like, no one's right or wrong. It's just differences of opinion, and being okay, just taking it back to that whole like volume, like the books. That's okay if someone is in your life for a chapter. Like, that is absolutely okay. Like, I definitely do not regret my relationship or my marriage at all. I learned so much, and I would not be where I am today if it was not for that relationship, because I needed that to take those stepping stones to that next place. And likewise, so did he. And it wasn't, like you say, anything wrong with either of us. It's just like, oh, actually, we have different value systems. And as you kind of go through your 20s, sometimes you're not really sure about them. When you head into your 30s, you're like, oh, this is who I am.
Okay. Chapters and seasons.
Yeah.
You mentioned age. I'm just curious, if you don't mind me asking, how young are you?
How young am I? I like that. I'm actually 35 next week, so I'll be 35 when this comes out.
35 years young, just getting warmed up.
That's right. Exactly.
What
I've
about,
learned, I've got a lot of my mistakes out of the way. So I'm hoping now,
you know what's crazy? A lot of our mutual friends and a lot of, I call them juggernauts in this space that are, extremely successful. They said to me, and it's like a commonality, they all say it, that they didn't really hit their stride and put it all together until their mid 40s. I feel like we have some bonus years left. And also it kind of makes sense now, right? Like, based upon like where you're at, like I feel like I've lived and grown like more in the last couple of years than the previous 34 combined.
100%.
Yeah.
And I also think too, like, entrepreneurship speeds that up, because I do
Yes.
believe that I always say, like, I have a mastermind, and I'm like in Boss Babe, we were teaching women to grow and scale their businesses. So spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs and mentoring entrepreneurs. And I always say, your ability as an entrepreneur isn't the amount of times that you can like hit the bullseye. Like, being an entrepreneur is not about hitting a bullseye once. Being an entrepreneur is about how many darts can you throw in that period of time, because the more darts you throw, the more you'll get on the board. And sometimes some of them are not even going to be in the bullseye. In fact, most of them won't. But the point is, it's about determination, and it's about like endurance, and being able to sustain and take action really, really quickly. And I think that's what's really different in a career. I think when you have a career, and speaking with someone who had a career as chiropractic, your goal isn't to throw as many darts as you can. Your goal is to be accurate. Your goal is to be like, okay, I only have 3 darts to play. I got to get them as close to the center as possible. I'm going to take my time to throw them. Whereas being an entrepreneur, scaling a company is like, I got as many darts as I can like have the energy to throw, essentially. Like, that's what's happening behind you. And it's like, go, go, go. How many can I learn from? And every single one that you throw, what can I learn from it? Where did it hit? Okay, it went too far right. I got to bring it in more to the left. Like, went too high. I got to bring it down a little bit. And I think that's like the biggest difference. And what that does is it creates a space to learn a lot quicker, because you're like falling over, you're getting back up again, you're falling over, you're getting back up again. But hang on, each time you get better and better, fall less or hit that target more. And I think that for me is what entrepreneurship has really done. And it also speeds up a lot of the like personal growth and personal development that you go through. And I think, again, why sometimes, maybe relationships come and go, whether they're personal or professional, or like, any type of relationships, because we're all evolving so much more quicker than if we've been in more steady careers. That's just my opinion anyway.
Yeah, that and the resilience, right? And a little bit of the stress, the unpredictability. I would agree.
Oh, yeah.
Where were you born?
I was born in Nottingham, in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, little England, Robin Hood.
When did you start speaking English?
Oh, it was England, so I was always
it was English the whole time?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, no.
Everyone's always like, they like my accent because it's very New York, but yours is 100 times better.
I tell you what, it's so funny, like being in the US, everyone commenting on your accents, and that never happens in the UK. Like, we were. It was normal.
There's so many places that we can take this conversation. one thing that you're really big on, and I have to at least touch upon this because I am as well. And when I reinvented myself, I didn't do a lot of things right my whole life, but over the last 3 years, I've done a lot of great things, and I did make some good decisions. And one thing I really made an emphasis on when I was going to start a personal brand from nothing was community. And I think community is so beautiful and so special, not only for building a personal brand, but also in your life. When did you realize that that was so important for you?
Oh, great question. I honestly don't think I realized it until I didn't have it for a long time. So I graduated in 2010 and went straight out of chiropractic school and got a job. And then I went on to own several of my clinics in the UK along with another partnership. And we together had like we were growing like the fastest growing primary healthcare brand in the UK at that time. And that was great. But two things really happened. One, it was a very isolating profession because I was in clinical rooms a lot. And second of all, the conversations that the people that I was around, tended to be men who were career driven at that point. So I didn't really have any role models who are women at that point in my life who were doing business. And so in like 2016, 2017, there was my dad had a skiing accident, which was part of my deciding to transition. But I realized that I felt really lonely as a woman entrepreneur. I felt really like I didn't have a safe place to say to my friends, hey, I want to make more money, or I want to do this. I kind of felt like they thought I was an absolute alien, or maybe even worse, greedy. Like, how could I possibly want to earn more money? I was already earning good money. So I just started feeling like really, really lonely. And that's when in 2017, I met Natalie, who became my business partner in Boss Babe. And we actually came together because we both felt lonely as entrepreneurs. We both felt lonely in the aspect of like, hang on a minute, we want to be what we coined unapologetically ambitious. So we decided to partner and grow Boss Babe, which now has like,
Real quick, how'd you guys meet, Danielle?
at an event in San Diego. It's so
That's
wild.
good.
I actually took vacation time
Yeah.
from my chiropractic position and flew out there on a vacation, and we met. I think we met in the September. It's like a whirlwind romance. We met in the September 2017 and we formed our partnership in Boss Babe in February 2018. And then that year we went on to do like 1.4 million.
No big deal.
So but that Boss Babe was built on community, and it was built on this, like, but at that point, you know, there weren't many people doing women like led communities, particularly not around business. It's much more popular now. But at that point, it was bringing women together to be like, hey, if you're a businesswoman, if you're ambitious, like this is the place for you. We started a membership called the Society, which is where female entrepreneurs connect, build, and grow. And we built that. And, you know, over that period of time, it brought women together. And I think that's when I started realizing the importance of community. Up until that point, so pre-2017, I just knew I was lonely, but I didn't really recognize what I was lonely from. And then that transitioned to me like, oh, hang on a minute. A classic entrepreneur. If I feel like this, other people feel like this. Okay, let's like build something to bring people together.
Problem
And
solving.
so exactly, problem solving through and through. So we went on this trajectory. And then it's funny now because as we built Boss Babe and the Society into like one of the biggest platforms for women entrepreneurs, I also realized that there was a technical element missing to communities. I felt like, you know, what you got on Instagram and you got on Facebook, etc., was these vast communities. But with that became like this dilution around like, well, how do I access these communities on a more intimate basis, like really easily from my phone, from like, you know, resources that really work for me. And so that's where my next business has been born, which I've co-founded with several other people, which is called Member Up, which is basically a software app that you can build and customize your own communities from. Because I do think, you know, we've been in an era where, you know, traditionally people would buy, and this is where I'll tell you where I think business is going and marketing is going too. You know, we went through this era of Facebook and Instagram ads, etc. That was how you were acquiring new customers, particularly up until the iOS update. And that's all business to business. So you're spending money with Facebook as a business, and you're a business to acquire your customers. But where I really feel like we're going now is more into a business to community model. We know that the cost per leads are astronomical if you're doing any ads-based stuff nowadays. And really the best way to acquire customers is actually to penetrate other people's communities, either via things like email newsletters, because people have got, a strong email newsletter base, even, or I would say doing something with an influencer, but I would always stay in the micro influencer space now, kind of around that 50,000 and down. It's not as scalable, but you get some really, really good
Those are more
cost
loyal,
per leads.
engaging communities, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, finding other, people who have brought people together, similar to like Boss Babe had as well. Because I think as we go through, and I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, but I think as we go through this economic period as well, people are going to be, well, they are already like much more cautious about where they're spending money, and they need that trust factor. And so you want to be, looking at communities that not have just, started in the last couple of months, but they've actually had this trust factor going for years. And how can you be part of that and borrow that trust until you build your own and your own various communities as well?
This is so good and so important. And I think there's some people out there that have a scarcity mindset, and they're like, oh, if I bring Danielle into my community, she's going to like cannibalize them, or they're going to want to work with her. No, it's an abundant mindset. There's enough for all of us to win and serve, and we all do something a little bit differently. And I think collaboration is the most beautiful thing these days.
Yeah. And I think it's just sometimes when you're in a space, it's like you decide to buy, I don't know, I decided to buy a Range Rover, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing Range Rovers everywhere, right? It's like that whole pattern of recognition. And I think sometimes we think what we do is really, really like popular. Everyone's doing it. But if you look at social media, like the stats of social media, I can't quite remember 100% off by heart. I think it's like 4 something billion on social media now. And like only 1% of people on social media are actual intentional creators. And so sometimes like I see people like, not like collaborating on stuff because like, oh my God, they got a competition. I'm like, do you know how many people are not even doing this? Like you are literally just watching a very, very small percentage of the people on here. And so when you start looking at those stats, you realize, like you say, actually there is so much available for all of us. And also I think there's a lot of power in cross-pollination. So if you are collaborating with someone, pick someone that's complementary and be like, hey, let me send my people to you. And then you send your people to me for this thing. Like that's actually really, really great marketing strategy, because you can often like, one, you might even get affiliate cuts or whatever you like partnership deals you have. And likewise, then you're getting new leads in. And we all know that the cost of leads, I mean, is really, the more you can drive down the cost of leads in a business, is like the best thing that you can do for a business, because it lowers your costs. And so whether that's on the front end, bringing in brand new customers via new, people existing, or getting your customers to do that for you on the back end by advocating for you and having referral systems for them to bring in, you should be looking at both to make a business successful.
100%. And in 2023, like essentially that doesn't cost anything to cross promote and collab and stuff. Even like something as simple as like going live on Instagram, all of a sudden you infiltrate someone else's audience and they get to see what you're about and so forth.
Exactly. It's like a win-win for everybody. So I think, just anyone, I get it. Like it's definitely difficult in entrepreneurship. Sometimes you go through phases where you might be feeling a little bit more scarce. You might be feeling a little bit more nervous about X, Y, and Z. But the more you can acknowledge that for yourself, the more that you can overcome it and actively do things that push against maybe your edges. That's actually where a lot of the change that we spoke about, like that development is. But second of all, that's actually where a lot of, the extra bits that you could add to your business, like particularly on a revenue basis, really come in. And that's one thing I've learned hugely, is like all about, and I don't even ask for anything in exchange quite often, because I know it just comes around energetically. So I'm like, hey, yeah, come, you want to, like the amount of people we would have on the Boss Babe podcast, like having promote their book or promoting something. And it was never like, there was never backhanders to us or any kickbacks. We did it because we also know it comes around and we want to provide good content. So if you feel like you have good people in your life, whether they're creating content, whether they're creating they've got a service that they're selling, a product that they're selling, like share that with people, because that actually positions you as a better value add. I often, even on my social media account, will post other women companies. So I always think 2 things about how I refer things that I always like, I really love supporting women founders, particularly. Obviously, men founders, amazing too. But right now, the statistic of women's businesses reaching 7 figures is 2%. And I think that's really shitty. So I'm like, how can I
2%?
help? Yeah, two, that's it. It's crazy,
I didn't realize.
crazy low.
Let's change that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I created my newsletter, because I was like, this is so bad. Because when I started Boss Babe, the stats of women-owned businesses was 22% in America. When the survey was done in 2022, it was actually 48%. So I really like to think Boss Babe was a huge part of that. And then I started looking at the next statistic that I wanted to change, which was this 2%, only 2% of women's businesses reaching 7 figures. And I was like, what can I do? So I create a marketing newsletter every single week, which just gives a ton of value. But I also make sure I'm conscious about where I shop. Like if I can support a woman founder, like I'm going to do that. And I don't necessarily like, I would say 99% of the time I'm promoting them. I'm not getting any referrals or affiliate links, because I also see it as a value add to my audience, because they know I'll never promote anything that I don't already agree with. And then they trust me and then they'll come back to me in other ways. So it's
Right.
just a different way of thinking around business. That's not always like, don't always look for the immediate transactions, look for the long-term relationships and the long-term gains. And that will always put you in a better position.
I couldn't agree more. And on that note, how does my community and audience sign up for your newsletter?
Oh, I will put a link in the show notes, but it's Danielle -Canty/newsletter. And there's also on my Instagram account, which is just Danielle Canty, my name. I've got a little link tree or link in bio. It's there as well. But yeah, it's free. It goes out every Tuesday. And I just like release, I do either just release teaching content, or sometimes I'll do analysis of what I'm seeing in the market. Sometimes I'll do analysis of like campaigns. Like I broke down the Barbie movie campaign and why it was a huge success in the first, movie to do over $1 billion. Like I just look at what's happening, because I think marketing, particularly in this period, it changes really rapidly. We're in an economic change as well. So like being at the forefront of this and just keeping your eye on everything and reading. And I just found it when I first got started. Again, I'm problem solving. When I first got started, I was not a natural marketer at all. In fact, I was probably like, didn't really understand marketing at all. I thought it was this like art that was like intangible, and I just like could not get my head around it. And what I realized is actually like marketing is a formula. It's very formulaic. It's, really about like touch points and trust and seeing things. And, then towards the end was scarcity or urgency, or however you want to position those pieces. But it is very formulaic. And so it took me years and years and years and a ton of mistakes. And I was like, wait, how can I help other people not have to go through all of these mistakes like I did? And so that's why I created it. So I just, everything that I'm reading, I pull it all together, make sense of it, and then just like deliver it to your inbox every Tuesday.
This conversation is so fun because it's totally off the cuff, which are the best ones. I'm a big movie guy. Like I even love just looking at the numbers, and I'm a nerd. I always love to go to the movies, get a message from them. Me and fiance go all the time with this movie we like. I actually didn't see the Barbie movie, but I was so impressed with their marketing campaign as well. And also, obviously, I mean, it's still going. It's north of 1.2 billion, which nobody saw coming. So I'm just curious, on that note, what did they do, in your opinion, that was so productive in regards to their campaign?
You know what they did best? They penetrated other people's communities. Think about it, right? There's an actor strike. Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, they couldn't even post about it, right? They did something like 152. I was looking at stats morning. I think it was 152 partnerships, like big, huge partnerships. Like they did a partnership with Burger King around like in certain states. So they had this like pink burger and stuff. Like they literally went into other people's communities and got other people's communities online. That's exactly what they did. And this is what I mean. Like if you are not acknowledging the power of community right now, if you're not building your own community right now, if you're not understanding what communities are and how you can be either sponsored in them or sponsorship for them, like you are missing the gate, like you are missing that. And so I think that's just really, really important. Like that's the number one thing that they did. They didn't even have their own audience. They just they just borrowed everyone's. Fine. They also had it was a 9-figure marketing budget. We don't always get that, but there's still lessons that you can take. Like Oppenheimer, like I saw both movies, like that you would have thought was going to be huge. I mean, even like Mission Impossible, like Tom Cruise. It like smashed all of them because it wasn't even about the billboards. Like I live in LA, so I see billboards all the time. It wasn't even about that. Like they literally were like anywhere and everywhere to do with smaller niches. Like they niched down into like smaller targeted groups. They weren't just like, hey, come see the Barbie movie. They were like, hey, you over here, you're interested in this. Come and see the Barbie because come and see Barbie movie because X, Y, and Z. Oh, you're interested in this. Let's give you a different pain point or a different target that you will relate to. Like that's what they did really well. So it meant that, you know, lots of different people went from different backgrounds, men and women have been to it. Because I honestly, if like, I'm really honest, like I don't think it was the best movie I've ever seen. It wasn't. So it's not like I'm like, I don't think it's like referrals that got people there. It's not like, oh my God, you have to see this movie. It's the best thing I've ever seen since X, Y, and Z. No, it's like, okay, like I actually really appreciated the messaging that they were adding in it. But I didn't see, no one really told me to go see it. It was the marketing that got me there.
It was the buzz, that Hollywood hype.
Yeah. And now I'm like missing out because I don't see it. Now you're getting FOMO. So it was so smart.
This is, it's so funny because we were talking about community and infiltrating other audiences. And then I brought up Barbie, and that's exactly what they did. And they're so intentional, methodical, and strategic, which I know you are too, always playing chess. I love that. Did you see all three of those movies, Oppenheimer and also Mission Impossible?
I haven't seen Mission Impossible yet, but I actually do want to because I've seen all the others.
Yeah, you saw Oppenheimer?
Yeah, I saw that. I loved it.
Wasn't
I
it
thought
fantastic?
it was, yeah, it was amazing. Very like educational too. And I went also, this is my thing, right? Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I agreed. I didn't realize it was like the beginning of quantum, which I'm so fascinated with.
I know that for me, like I had my first kind of like look into quantum when I went to Joe Dispenza's webinar, his advanced meditation thing. It's like 6 days and he talks a lot about it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I went to that and it was just really funny too, because I really learned living in LA and Hollywood. Like you end up with like friends who are in the industry, quotation marks, and they go and see movies and I'm just like, oh, that was cool. Or like, that was that. And they're like, yo, did you hear the sound? Did you see the lighting? Did you see how it was shot? And I'm like, okay. Oh yeah, I like the storyline.
Yeah.
So I'm like amateur hour over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always funny after going to movies with them and like how they feel. But yeah, like I think that, you know, it's been really interesting to see, particularly like where a lot of these creations are born from. Like actually it was, Barbie wasn't any more in LA than anywhere else. But what they did, like I said, was they were everywhere, like in every city, in every state, in every country. And
Genius.
they just started outstanding marketing.
And just to be clear for the listeners that might not understand exactly, there's an actor strike going on, which means all these huge actors, such as Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, they can't leverage their social media to promote, which is a huge piece of the marketing in Hollywood these days, correct?
Yeah. Correct. And so that's what also, like a lot of the times you'll bring like, and by the way, I am not like speaking on behalf of the movie industry because like I'm not going to do it just service, but like a lot of the times that you bring in names because you know that they're going to help sell movies, etc. And you know, a lot of them come with, I'm sure, you know, if it's just like any of us, we're, you know, negotiating a partnership or we're negotiating a deal, we're going to negotiate our social media following into it because we know that's like, you know, eyes, etc. And so yeah, with this actors strike, not allowed to, as part of being on strike, not allowed to do any promotion with the movie. And so that you would have thought put a huge disadvantage on, but because they didn't leverage, they had a different plan. And I'm assuming this plan was probably already in motion before the actors' strikes. I don't think they would have had enough time to execute what they actually have done. It's just really, really smart. And I think it's, again, just showing, like, if you take anything away from listening to this audience and you have a business, if you listen to this podcast and you have a business, I think it's really understanding the complementary audience sets that serve you. So really seeing like, oh, hang on a minute, my business is in gardening. Okay, so maybe I sell flowers, but hang on a minute, what do people who like have flowers need? Okay, well, they actually might need this beautiful ceramics company who do the pots, or they might need a water irrigation system at home. Like, I'm really understanding like, okay, I can go to that water irrigation system, I can go to this water system and be like, hey, X, Y, and Z, do you want to do a partnership here? I can do, you know, and it's like seeing these paths, like this linear line around what are the complementary products either side of your product and your company that you can then partner with. They're not taking anything from you. You're not taking anything from them. But what you're probably going to find is the cost per lead to acquire that customer is actually a lot less because they've already niched down their audience. They've already got certain interests and they understand their pain points. And you can speak directly into the pain points because we know that when someone wants to buy, they have to go through the pain points, the limiting beliefs and the gaining beliefs, then actually make that purchase. So you can do that much quicker in smaller niched communities than you can right now going out on social media with ads where, you know, the targeting is not as proficient as it once was. The cost per lead is way more expensive. And there isn't necessarily the scaling opportunities that once were, unless you have money to gamble, should we say. I hate saying gamble. If you know your figures, it's not gambling, but you might be looking at like a 60-day turnaround time. And a lot of people want money out of their investment straight away. They want to be like, hey, I want to spend this and I want to get this return straight away. In social media, you know, on the paid side, that's not always possible anymore. So just kind of get everyone to think a little bit more outside the box around what might be a little bit harder to get off the ground and take a little bit more strategic thought, but will actually pay dividends in the long run for you and your business.
Speaking to you is awesome for so many reasons, but you were really, really enlightened and really with it. I'm curious, when you were a chiropractor, were you a gladiator in the wrong arena and you always had this in you? Or when you kind of pivoted, did you learn all this business savviness?
Great question. I was not a born entrepreneur. So, you know, these kids that are like, oh, they were doing lemonade stands and they were like selling other things to other kids. No, that was not me at all. I didn't even like know any entrepreneurs. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur blood thing was. I was like, what? My dad was an accountant. My mum was a teacher. So what I did do was like, my dad was tight as anything. Do you say tight when someone's like, doesn't give you much money?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Okay. I love my dad, but he was so tight. Like I used to like wish he was like my friend Gemma's dad who would give her money all the time. My dad would never give me any money. And I'm so grateful now because it taught me to be really good with money. And it also taught me to hustle. I had 3 jobs at the age of 13. Like technically you shouldn't be working at 13. I was like babysitting. I was running school, after school clubs. I was working in a shop.
Isn't that entrepreneurial?
No one is. But now they all are. So like now all my cousins and my brother are all entrepreneurial.
So maybe you weren't necessarily entrepreneurial, but having 3 jobs at 13, you were a self-starter. You were like willing to hustle and grind.
Exactly. And I think that's what I learned. I just learned to work hard. And I think that was when my value system of growth kicked in. So I was like, right, okay, like there's a problem. My dad won't buy me the cute little top that I want to buy because I'm a 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl. And so I'll go and work out how I can buy it myself. And so I just had all these jobs. And then when I went into chiropractic school, I went to chiropractic school because I wanted to help people. Like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it was like the classic, you know, I was in the middle of England, nothing was really going on. Like, what do you want to be when you're older? A doctor or a lawyer?
I can't even picture you being a chiropractor.
Yeah, it was fun times. But I loved it until I realized that just trading time for money was not, you know, going to get me where I wanted to be. And also, by the way, this is the other thing I want to be really clear. When I was like, let's say 19, I wanted to just earn a good, I just wanted to earn a good living. And when I was about 24, 25, I think I was earning about probably equates to like $100,000 a year. Because I was like working really hard and I invested in some of these businesses at this point and I fell into some places. But my dad was only earning $50,000. Well, his probably at $70,000. And so I was already out earning my dad. And then it was a chance conversation he wasn't a mentor, but he was just someone my friend knew. And she arranged a call for me to have with him. And he was like, how much do you want to earn a year? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, well, you earn 100. Like, you know, I was like, I don't know, like 200,000. And he was like, okay, let's double it. I'm like, 400,000 a year. How am I possibly ever going to earn 400,000 a year? Are you kidding me? Like none of my family didn't even earn that if you put all of them together. Like I was just like flabbergasted. Like there's no way. And so, but what that happened was when he said that to me and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to make that as a chiropractor. And like I said, my dad had a skiing accident, X, Y, and Z, and I started looking at careers. I realized that I wanted to go online. And I realized that on being online released this glass ceiling that I felt over my head. It released this ability to be able to scale. And so when I went in to move from chiropractic into Boss Babe in this online world, I really didn't know much. And I just want to say this to a lot of people about reinventions. It also took me a minute to realize that although as a chiropractor, I still had transferable skills, right? You might not say adjusting a neck is a transferable skill, but guess what? I was really good at listening to people and reading between the lines. Because guess what? When someone comes into your clinic and they're in pain and you're trying to understand what's happened, I was really good at problem solving, because to diagnose someone, you have to understand the root of it. So I was really good at starting to like put dots together that other people were not recognizing. Then when you're getting someone to, the UK, we don't have, we have the NHS, we don't have insurance. And so most people are paying for chiropractic out of their own pocket. So you have to tell them why it's of benefit to them to invest this money in themselves. So I hate to say it in this term, but it is selling them essentially, because they have to buy into why they should be, caring, and how that you can actually solve their problems. So I realized, and I also had management experience because I was managing my clinics. So I realized that I want everyone to listen to this who's thinking about reinvention. You might not have skills that like literally flip over and you're like, oh, these are really obvious, but actually you do have the fundamental skills to be able to grow and run a business in all the things that you've already been doing. You might not have them across, every single department, but you've already got a really, really strong foundation. And when I realized that, I just worked my absolute butt off to like make it succeed. Like there was no plan B, Craig. Like there was no plan B. Like I only had plan A. So I'm like, okay, how can I get this to work? And the same with like exiting Boss Babe. Like if you are always planning your plan A is your plan B is your plan C's, it's really actually difficult to get the plan A off the ground, because you're kind of like dipping the toe in the water. And I think sometimes you just have to go all in and be like, okay, I'm going to be in this season of like hustle, and I'm going to be in this season of being like a learner. Like I think that's the fundamental thing that's got me to where I am, is I've never been scared to ask questions. My mom and dad would say this. I was always the kid who would like ask the questions in school. I went to like, I've never been scared of looking silly. I'm like, well, I'd rather look silly and know the answer than look silly on a bigger mistake because I didn't ask when I didn't understand. And so I think just those principles have really got me to where I am, and allowing me to really see, hang on a minute, these things can be taken with me, but it's like, I actually don't know these other aspects, and that's okay. I'm going to figure them out, because, as soon as I feel like I know everything, I think the people I've realized, like I'm very blessed to be surrounded by some of the best business people in the world, people who sold their businesses for like over $1 billion. And they're really humble. Like they're not actually people that are like bragging about what they've done. They're not people who are like, not asking questions. Like hell, they sometimes ask me questions and I'm like, wait, you're asking me a question? Because yeah, I know more about certain things in certain areas, but they know a lot more in other areas. And I think it's just that realization that, being humble about what you know and what you don't know is actually such a gift to give to yourself, because then it allows you to learn and apply it, or work with the people, which, let's be honest, a business is really built around the team that you're able to, bring on board and see your vision in, motivate them and find those right people to do the jobs that you can't do yourself.
I mean, where do I begin? This is unbelievable. Chapter 18 in my book, Burn the Boats, Burn the Ships. And you just nailed it, right? Like when I was going to reinvent myself, I had to leave my business on Wall Street energetically, fully, so I can be all in on CLS, my brand. Even though there was no guarantee, I just knew that that's what it took. I also knew this, that even though I had no experience in this particular arena, all the things that made me successful in business, running these marathons, they weren't necessarily the things. They were me, just like they were you, just like they were anybody else listening. And all those skill sets are transferable from one arena to the next.
100%. And when you realize that, it's such a gift to yourself, because you actually get, we're not starting again. You're not starting again at 25, 35, 45, 55, whatever age you are. You've got all that experience and all that wisdom to apply. And I think that's why people say, really hit their stride in their 40s. Because guess how many mistakes they've made? And most of the time you're actually learning more from your mistakes than your wins.
100%. Yeah. This is unbelievable. I know we're getting near the end. I wanted to ask you this honestly, selfishly. A lot of people in my community, I think, want to do big, great, epic stuff. But one of the things that holds a lot of people back is they're waiting for that perfect time or that right moment. But one thing that you talk about often is kind of overcoming being a perfectionist. And I am as well. Obviously, I'm still working on it, but I learned to now lean in to messy action and just getting in the arena, figuring things out. Clarity follows action. If it's not the thing, it'll be the thing that leads to a thing. How is that something that you've incorporated into your life?
One of the biggest things that I learned, and as a again, you know what I said earlier about I was throwing the darts? My chiropractic career was about having less darts and having to throw them more accurately. Like you can't be experimenting with people's bodies. Like you have to be really precise and really eliminate risk. So I went from like the total opposite. But what I would say is, so I was a real big perfectionist, and going into this entrepreneurial online space was really getting me out of my comfort zone. And I struggled so much. And one of the things I realized is that I started saying to myself, 80% was perfect, right? Because I used to be 100% perfect. Like I'll do it, like when I released this was 100%. And I started realizing that if it was 80%, then I learned this from Pareto's principle, which everyone will know. It's like, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your business. Like I just started going playing with this 80-20% rule and where other various points in my life where it would work. And I was like, well, if it's 80% done, like then it's perfect. And that other 20% isn't really going to matter. Like that other 20%, and let's say I was working with people, I learned to do this. If I was working with people, I would be like, if they get 80% of it right, the 20% is like the nuances that they might have done differently to me. But if I want everything to be 100% for my team, then that's also not going to happen for me to be able to ship it. So it was this principle around like, okay, do I think this is 80%? 80% of this is okay. Okay, cool. Let me ship it. And I read books like, what's the one by, is it Blitzscaling? Blitzscaling talks around like, if you release your products, if the first product you release you're proud of, you've released it too late.
Oh,
And so I really like, I don't think that should mean it's like shit and it's 20% you're happy with it. But if you're 80% happy with it, I really started going by that principle. If I'm 80% happy with it, then let me ship it and get it out there. And because otherwise what used to happen is I was also a lot behind the scenes initially, and I didn't even post on social media. And I wouldn't post on social media because I want every single post to be perfect. And by the time I got it perfect, it had taken me so long that then the next week had come round. And then it was like, I was releasing like one a week versus now what I do is like, one a day or one every 3 days. And Boss Babe, we were doing like with a team, like 3 a day. So yeah, I just really applied those principles. That's what really helped me. And just realizing that there's such a gifted imperfect action, and actually moving forwards is better than not moving at all. And so just to ground this once more a little bit in the social media platform, if I posted, because this was my biggest thing, let's say if I posted on Instagram and I posted 5 posts in a week, which were not perfect, there were only like 80% out there, but guess what? They were reached by 1 million people. Do you think one post that was 100% perfect was going to see even 1 million people? No, it wasn't. It was probably going to see like 200,000 people, 300,000 people. And so that was like, if you look at data, like you're better getting those things out there. And if you're building a product-based business, like with us building Member Up now, is our first version one, the version one that, we're like, oh yeah, this is the golden version. No, because we have to get it out there to see how people are using it so that we can channel the efforts into the next stage of like, oh, we thought they might want this, but they want this. And so there's so much learning if you can ship it at that 80%, because then the rest of it comes from feedback from your customers and feedback from the interactions that you're getting from audiences.
and also it releases the expectations, doesn't have like uncomfortable, messy action.
Oh my God, yeah.
All the real growth happens on the other side of that.
100%. You're always learning. There's never a mistake. There's only learnings.
That's right. That's right. And it goes back to something else you kind of said. Don't quote me on this, but I love your quote. Something along the lines of, you only fail if you quit.
Yeah, I always say that.
So
yeah.
good.
Like if you just keep getting back up again, you're not actually failed. Like the only moment you actually fail is when you stop trying anymore. That's it.
This conversation might have been the most like spontaneous and off the cuff I've ever had. And it was so much fun. I think I know the answer to this, but for our community that might not be familiar, like what's the best way for them to support you, and what are you personally most excited about right now?
Ooh, I'm excited about life, Craig. I like love entrepreneurship. Like I'm excited that I don't even know where I'll be in 10 years. How freaking amazing is
I could
that?
talk to you for 10
Um,
years straight. Never, this is awesome.
yeah, I'm just excited. And so the best way you guys can support me is like just it's something about supporting me. It's like if I give value, then enjoy it. Sign up. Like if you like the newsletter, come sign up and share it with friends if you're struggling with marketing right now. And if you're building a community and you want to look at a software that's like kind of cross, I would say it's like solving the problems of Kajabi and Circle, and then like all in one with better design, then come check it out and member up, and I'll like give you some codes in the description that you can release, Craig. So I think I've got some like free trials and stuff for member up too, and then you can also access those from my boss babe, from my LinkedIn on my Instagram and all those jazz. But yeah,
I love it. And for anyone that's not following her, do so immediately. Follow this conversation. Her content's unbelievable.
yeah.
Danielle, hang
Oh,
up for
thanks
one
so much.
second. I want to connect with you after.
Yeah.
I want you to know you the definition of reinvention, self-belief, and authentic energy. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thanks, Craig.
I mean, I could talk to you all day.
This is so fun.
These conversations, these are my dinner conversations. Love them.
I know, it's so great. Like I literally miss not having a podcast so much.
I was gonna
But it's
ask you.
actually fun going on other people's.